Hi. I'll be refuting Veronica's claim that the No Child Left Behind Act is an ineffective policy. The first claim to support this, the main claim was that the No Child Left Behind Act had a negative effect on students. First of all, my opponent used the same source for most of the evidence for the first supporting claim about the effect on students. She quoted Diane Ravitch, and she used that for most of the evidence in the for the first secondary claim. And also, my opponent claims that the No Child Left Behind Act requires students to be proficient in English, math, and other academic subjects. But right before that, she said that the No Child Left Behind Act doesn't offer a well-rounded education, so that's a little bit contradictory. Because other academic students could develop a wide variety of subjects. Her secondary claim was that the No Child Left Behind Act has a negative effect on schools. Again, she again quoted Diane Ravitch, and so she's used Diane Ravitch for most of the evidence so far, which is what the textbook advocacy and opposition term calls an appeal to authority, which is classified as a fallacy. And also she claims that the school system is being privatized, but it's only certain schools that fail to meet the standards set by the No Child Left Behind Act. It's not the entire school system. And in addition, privatizing isn't necessarily a bad thing, because the No Child Left Behind That Act reauthorized the Elementary and Secondary Education Act to improve education for disabled students and to improve the teaching quality by making sure teachers are properly trained, and by offering extra help to students for whom English was not their first language. My opponent's third secondary claim was that the No Child Left Behind Act has a negative effect on educators. Sorry. Okay. So she mentioned Lorenzo Garcia and certain other executives from other schools that were accused of fraud and cheating on standardized tests. But no statistic was given regarding how often this happened. This has happened since the act was passed, and how often similar instances of cheating occurred before the act was passed. Also, so that indicates a fallacy of presumption, according to the text, advocacy, and argument, because my opponent is taking a few instances and generalizing them to apply to the whole big picture. In addition, cheating can be done on any test, whether or not on any test. It's not just so if a teacher gives a test and a student cheats on it, it's not the teacher's fault that the student cheated, just as it's not the fault of the Bush administration that enforced the No Child Left Behind Act it's not their fault that certain school executives and students cheated on the standardized test. Thank you.
Okay, well, you labeled the main proposition pretty clearly. There's not really a preview of what the secondary issues are going to be. You dive right into challenging that first point. Your argument on the first point seems to be that there's all the evidence on that point comes from one source, but you don't tell us what's wrong with that source. You don't tell us why there's a problem with the evidence that comes from that source. So I don't understand what the criticism here is. Then you say that you kind of have this argument that there's something that's contradictory that's being made here. I think that you're focusing on a minor issue here that doesn't really identify, that doesn't really undermine the claim on this particular point. It raises kind of a diversionary issue on this point. I don't know that it's even contradictory given the way it's been described here, so I think that that's maybe a little bit of a waste of time on that point. On the second point, you come back to the same issue. You know, you challenge the advocate's source. There's never any reason why Refutation isn't a reliable source. The argument that you make here is that it's appeal to authority. I guess if you're saying that this is the only source that's presented and we're being asked to accept the conclusions based only on this person's authority, that would be problematic. But that would be helpful then that you had some challenge to this person's authority. I do think that the advocate probably presented some other sources for some of the claims, and so the idea that it's all a single claim is problematic. Basically, your position seems to be if they present any information, then it's an appeal to authority because they provided information. They're asking us to believe this because of the information. That's not a legitimate press on that issue. I like the idea of your arguing that privatization is not necessarily a bad thing, but you don't develop any proof on that point. And the notion that it could have a beneficial impact should be something that you document. Then there's an argument that says additional assistance is provided because of No Child Left Behind. Here's a good place where some information that shows that is funded adequately, that it's having a beneficial effect or impact, or that the scores had gone up in some way, anything that would tend to contradict the authority that the advocate is citing on the other side. I did think that you had a legitimate press on the third point, arguing that we don't know the frequency with which this kind of cheating takes place and whether or not it was done before. I do think you also have a good argument here. It's not as clearly explained that, in essence, we're blaming the test for the cheaters instead of the cheaters themselves. I think that that's a legitimate argument to make there. I'm not sure that it's a fallacy of presumption. They're just making an inductive generalization here from these examples that seems to suggest that there is a lot of stress on the teachers. If they weren't getting any financial remuneration or there's any other reason for cheating, then it seems to be because of the pressure being put on by the test. I think that's the inference that the advocate's making on that particular point. Just a couple things about presentation. You look a little uncomfortable the whole time you're speaking. You need to try and stand a little bit more confidently, and hopefully you can project your voice a little more.